We're going to talk to Helen Dudeny now, who set up a website called Complaining Cow. And you've had a lot of complaints from Ryanair people. What are you able to tell them about their rights?
Well, certainly if they've had their flight cancelled or they've been delayed, they are, and over sort of 3 hours, then they're entitled to the EU compensation. But Ryanair seem to be saying that the strike is not within their control and it is an extraordinary circumstance and they don't have to pay out. But the Civil Aviation Authority disagree and say that strikes are within airlines' control and they should be paying out compensation.
So who is the final arbiter in that? Who says, yes, no, Ryanair's right or the CAA are right?
Well, it should be the CAA, and in fact, the Court of Justice, the European Court of Justice, has also ruled earlier this year that strikes are not extraordinary circumstances. So that court has said that they should be paying out. I
did ask them about contacting them, and they said they have this very efficient web chat thing, but no phone calls. And that's one of the problems that people have contacted us about, that they can't phone Ryanair.
Yeah, I think that's a difficulty when they're in the airport and they're trying to get an alternative flight, because certainly if Ryanair aren't providing an alternative flight, they are entitled to go and find another one, which Ryanair should pay for. But certainly, I think they make it as difficult as they possibly can for people. I really do.
And your advice to somebody is what? If they've got a problem, what should they do? What's their first port of call?
Always write, though. Although there isn't the phone, unless you really want that at that point, because then you've got the evidence and you've got the evidence trail. You can certainly write to the CEO whether it's worth it with Ryanair. It probably still is, because although he isn't going to deal with the matter, it does get it escalated. It does get it off the form and the possibility of it being lost, and you're able to give all the details. The previous court actions.
Apart from anything else, I mean, you were mentioning to me there's a problem with parking. You may have gone to pick somebody up. It cost you a lot of money to stand for a couple of hours in one of the short stay car parks.
Certainly I'm hearing
who
about
that.
Yes, well, I'm interested to see, because certainly when I asked the Civil Aviation Authority, when somebody's gone to pick somebody up and they've parked in a free car park for up to an hour and they're having to take 2 to 3 hours, they just said it's very difficult. It could be the airline, it could be the airport. And I'm thinking, well, I'm going to try and find out who it is, and if I have to take somebody to court to find out, I will.
Helen, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed.
David O'Brien, Ryanair's chief commercial officer, told us the airline cares immensely about its passengers. Stuart asked him why some of those awaiting compensation received cheques which bounced.
This is a function of Ryanair's desire to promptly respond to passengers. We aim to deliver a response to our passengers within 10 working days. EasyJet, by contrast, 45 working days. Now, in the case of those 190, in fact less than 190 cheques, that was an administrative error, which we've corrected. We've reissued the cheques and we've apologised.
But are you going to pay bank charges to those people who had to pay bank charges because one of your cheques came back?
The question hasn't arisen.
But I'm asking you now then, will you?
It won't be my decision. I'm on
but do you think you should?
Sorry?
You think you should?
You know what? I think we possibly should. Yes. So if people wish to write into us on that very point, we will. But the cost of doing so may make it less than worthwhile.
What about that case we had at Stansted very recently, where flights were delayed? They got in after midnight, after 1 o'clock, and passengers were waiting 3-4 hours for their bags. That's down to you, isn't it?
No, it isn't down to us. We employ a handling agent in Stansted who have laboured under quite difficult circumstances given the air traffic control situation, which may cause many more aircraft to arrive than are scheduled for that period. I should say also, though, that their performance has not been acceptable to us this summer. And if it doesn't improve, we will change them.
So it will be down to somebody like you to make sure, to look at the flight plans and say, these flights are going to be late into Stansted.
As we do. However,
let's just phone Swissport and make sure they've got enough people on duty. So somebody didn't do that.
Oh, somebody does that all the time. Swissport, for example, Swissport have sight of Ryanair's scheduling system.
So they failed you?
They have failed us. Now, I will give them some mitigation in the fact that we are operating, all of us, in an environment that is quite and incredibly difficult. But I have to say, we are unhappy with the performance of our handling agents in Stansted, and that will be corrected.
So it's air traffic control, it's Swissport, and it's the weather. but it's not Ryanair that's been causing the problems.
That is true. That is correct.
Well, in a statement, Swissport said a number of factors outside its control had affected its service at Stansted. The company said it was working with Ryanair to agree additional resilience for all its future operations. Well, Helen Dewdney is a consumer journalist who set up the Complaining Cow website. Earlier, I asked her about the problems facing Ryanair passengers trying to get compensation.
Yeah, people are certainly having a difficulty. There seems to be so we say a difference of opinion as to whether Ryanair should be paying, because they feel they shouldn't be paying because it's not within their control that the pilots and the cabin crew a couple of months ago were going on strike. But the Civil Aviation Authority have said that very categorically that strikes are within an airline's control and that they should be paying compensation. And in fact, earlier in the year, the European Court of Justice also ruled the same.
Well, Ryanair have been in touch on that point and are saying that they comply fully with the relevant legislation on this, under which no compensation is payable to customers when the strike, delay, cancellation is beyond the airline's control. If these strikes by a tiny minority of Ryanair pilots were within Ryanair's control, there would have been no strikes and no cancellations. And they insist they do care about their customers, their passengers, and are trying to put things right.
Well, I think it's an interesting one to see. We certainly are hearing people beginning to get their compensation, and certainly last year when we had the Ryanair strikes and Ryanair weren't paying out, there was some enforcement action from the CAA last year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. The CAA said that they're monitoring the matter closely, so I think we have to see how it pans out. But certainly people should be applying to Ryanair for that compensation and asserting their legal rights.
OK, Helen Dewdney, thanks very much indeed for joining us.